is the dawn of a new era, one foretold in ancient prophecies. War has brought famine, and in turn the omens of a coming storm continue to wither the chances of peace and prosperity. With great conflict on the horizon, now is the time to gather all your strength and set out to forge your place in Tiranoth's Book of Legend. Rune Age is a card game where each player builds his own deck of cards over the course of the game. 2 to 4 players each control one of 4 races: the Deccan Lords, the Latari Elves, the Uthuculon, or Waikar the Undying. Throughout the game, players build up their army by purchasing new cards to add to their deck. Players use these cards to secure cities, defeat enemies, and ultimately win the game by completing the scenario's objective. The object of the game varies depending upon which scenario the players choose. Rune Age comes with 4 unique scenarios. Some focus on player elimination, while others require all races to unite and defeat a common threat. In our example, 4 players are using the first scenario, Resurgence of the Dragon Lords. The card reads, "This objective card is considered an enemy. The player who defeats this objective wins the game. The card's strength is 18, the number a player must reach or exceed to defeat it." Let's take a look at a sample game round using this objective card. The central play area of Rune Age is comprised of several cards. First, the objective card explains the winning conditions for this particular scenario. Each Rune Age scenario uses its own unique objective card. Next, the gold card pool consists of 3 decks with 3 different values, 1, 2, and 3. They represent the basic currency used to purchase faction units. The city cards represent the great neutral cities of Tiranoth. Players can secure cities, which provide them with influence. The neutral card pool consists of units and tactics that may be acquired and used by any race. Faction unit cards are unique to each race and come in 4 different types, which are classified by their cost in the lower right corner of the card. In our example, we will jump directly into the middle of a 4-player game and showcase a game round. Each scenario uses a deck of 10 event cards. These cards present the players with unique challenges during the scenario. At the end of the previous game round, round 2 in this example, player 1 revealed the top card of the event deck. The revealed card was the Slumbering Dragon Lord, which reads, "The player who defeats this enemy claims it as a reward. The reward for claiming this enemy is 1 influence, as indicated in the upper left corner." The Slumbering Dragon Lord, having been placed in the central play area, is now an optional target for any of the 4 players, and will remain in play until it is defeated. Players spend the majority of their turn performing actions, which can be performed in any order and any number of times per turn, provided that the player has sufficient resources to perform them. There are 4 types of actions: spend gold action, spend influence action, combat action, and card action. Player 1 is playing as Waikar the Undying, and has a starting hand of 4 gold and 1 reanimate. He begins his turn by performing a spend action. He places his 4 gold into his discard pile to purchase 2 skeleton archers. Player 1 takes 2 skeleton archers from his barracks and places them on his discard pile. If a player's deck is ever depleted, he reshuffles his discard pile to refresh his deck. At the end of his turn, player 1 must either discard the rest of his hand or spend 1 influence per card he wishes to keep. Player 1 chooses to exhaust his stronghold card, by rotating it sideways, and spend the influence to keep the reanimate card in his hand. Finally, player 1 replenishes his hand back up to 5 cards at the end of his turn. It is now player 2's turn. Player 2 is playing as the Deccan Lords and has a starting hand of 2 gold, 2 footmen, and 1 battle cry. He begins his turn by spending 2 gold to purchase 1 bowman unit, which he takes from his barracks and places in his discard pile. Next, he performs a combat action in order to secure a second stronghold. Declaring the stronghold as a target, player 2 now plays cards one at a time from his hand and may resolve any when-played abilities as shown on the card. All abilities are optional. Player 2 plays 1 footman card and chooses to use its when-played ability. The footman's ability reads, when played, reveal the top card of your deck. If it is a footman, draw it into your hand. Otherwise, discard it or place it on top of your deck. Player 2 reveals the top card of his deck, which is a 2 gold card. Since it is not a footman, he has the option of placing the card on the top of his deck or in his discard pile. Player 2 decides to save the 2 gold for the next round, so he places it on top of his deck. He then plays his second footman card and chooses not to resolve the footman's when played ability. Now player 2 has a total of 2 strength in this battle, which is enough to secure a second stronghold. He takes a stronghold from his barracks and places it above his home realm card, discarding the units involved in the battle. He can now generate up to 4 influence. Players spend influence to acquire neutral cards, such as gold, tactics, and neutral units. Player 2 decides to spend all 4 of his influence to acquire a Forced March neutral card. Forced March reads, action. Destroy 1 card in your hand to draw 2 cards. As with all acquired cards, Forced March is added to player 2's discard pile. Player 2 exhausted all of his influence, so he does not have the option of retaining cards in his hand. He is forced to discard Battle Cry and then replenishes his hand to 5 cards. It is now player 3's turn. Player 3 is playing as the Latari Elves and has a starting hand of 3 Deepwood Archers, 1 Donati Warrior, and 1 Battle Cry. Player 3 chooses to perform a combat action against one of the available neutral cities. In this case, he chooses the city of Tarmalier. Tarmalier has a strength of 8, the number that player 3 must reach or exceed in order to claim the city for himself. Player 3 begins the battle by playing his Donati Warrior card, which has a strength of 3, and chooses not to resolve the when played ability. Next, player 3 plays each of his 3 Deepwood Archers, ignoring each when played ability, bringing his total strength to 6. Finally, player 3 plays a Battle Cry card, which reads, Resolution. Add 1 to each unit's strength in your army. Resolution abilities take effect at the end of combat, when players total their strength. This brings player 3's total strength to 10, which is enough to claim the city of Tarmalier. Player 3 ends the battle and places the Tarmalier card above his home realm. He then discards the unit and tactic cards involved in the battle. Together with his 2 existing strongholds, player 3 can generate up to 5 influence. He chooses to spend all 5 influence to acquire a 3-value gold card. This is added to his discard pile as well, and then player 3 replenishes his hand to 5 cards. Finally, it is player 4's turn. Player 4 is playing as the Uthuculon and has a starting hand of 2 gold, 1 Flesh Ripper, and 2 Berserkers. He begins by spending his 2 gold cards on a Flesh Ripper, which he takes from his barracks and places in his discard pile. Next, he decides to perform a combat action against the Slumbering Dragon Lord event card, which has a strength of 5. Player 4 begins the battle by playing 2 Berserkers. The Berserker's ability reads, Resolution. If wounded, add 2 strength to this unit. He then plays his Flesh Ripper card, which reads, When played, wound 1 friendly unit to draw 1 card. Player 4 chooses to use the Flesh Ripper ability to wound one of his Berserkers and draws a card. He rotates one of his 2 Berserkers sideways to indicate that the unit is wounded. Wounded units are destroyed at the end of combat. This gives the Berserker plus 2 strength, bringing player 4's total attack strength up to 6. This is enough strength to defeat the Slumbering Dragon Lord's strength of 5, but first, player 4 must roll the attrition die. The attrition die is used to determine how many units are destroyed during combat against certain event cards, and it can randomly affect the outcome of combat. Players must roll the attrition die when the event card shows the attrition die icon in the lower left corner. Now that player 4 has committed all of his units, he rolls the attrition die, which shows 1 skull. This result means that the player must choose to remove 1 of his units from combat, placing it back into its pile of origin. He chooses to destroy the unwounded Berserker, returning it to its barracks. Player 4 now totals up his final strength, which equals 5. This is just enough to defeat the Slumbering Dragon Lord. He claims it as a reward and places it above his home realm, where it can now generate 1 influence, similar to a stronghold. Since one of player 4's Berserker units was wounded during the battle, it is destroyed at the end of combat and returned to its pile of origin. The remaining units involved in the battle are returned to player 4's discard pile. Finally, player 4 exhausts the Slumbering Dragon Lord to spend 1 influence to keep his last card in hand. He then replenishes his hand to 5 cards. At the end of the last player's turn, the first player reveals the top card of the event deck, and the game round is complete. Play continues in this fashion until a player fulfills the conditions of the objective card, or until all players have been defeated. This concludes our overview of Rune Age. To learn more about the game, additional rules, scenarios, and expansions, visit www.fantasyflightgames.com.